Okay, so supper on, I'm Mentor Jason, and today I'm gonna read r/ no sleep stories. I know, a lot of people done this, but hey, I have to do it too, just in case. But yeah, today I'm gonna do only two stories since I don't know if you're gonna enjoy them. Okay, so the first story will be I finally got my own AirPods, but I hear something terrifying when I wear them. I first wore the AirPods to the Stop and Shop. It was an incredible, otherworldly experience. I listened to the soothing voice of Neil deGrasse Tyson while picking through the broccoli. I learned about quasars while waiting in line of the deli. Things got weird though when I got to the checkout line. The cashier was one of those annoying ones, the kind that makes cute little comments about the items you're buying, while you stand there in embarrassment. "Oh, these are good," he said as he slid my bag of lemonade iced tea across the scanner. Blip. I turned the volume up on Start Talk. "These are so useful. I own a few of them myself," he said as he scanned the car phone stand. He reached for the truffles. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "More chocolate for you, fat ass, huh?" I stopped dead. "Excuse me?" I asked, slipping off my AirPods. "More chocolate for you, art class, huh?" "That's not what you said." What? You said. I drifted off, looking at his pumply, juvenile face. He looked so innocent. Never mind. Maybe I did mishear him, I thought as I charged across the parking lot. After all, I was listening to Star Talk at the same time. Maybe the phone mist got all tangled up in each other. Or maybe he was just a jerk. I got home in bad mood, opened a box of truffles and inhaled 3 of them. Just to spite him. Then my roommate got home. "Tara, want to join me?" I said, patting the cushion next to me. "Nah," she said over the low drum of Kansas coming through the AirPods. "I got to take off my shoes and just smell my feet for a while." I stared at her blankly. "When are you taking your shower?" she asked. Not sure. Why?" "I'm going to sneak in your room and stalk your search history, like I do every night." "What?" "I can't believe you still stalk Adam on Face." I repeat on my AirPods. "Bok choy with chicken. Do you want some? I can make extra." I stared at her. "Are you going to go through my computer when I'm in the shower?" She paled. Then she ran into her bedroom and slammed the door shut. Did I mishear that too? No, there's no way. I packed a few things and left for a friend's house. When I got there, she had the TV on. "The search is still on the Mackenzie Johnson," the newscaster said. "If you have any information, please call the hotline." What's this?"
Some local woman is missing.
Amanda said. The film cut on an older man, Mackenzie's husband. "Please, if you have any information on my wife's whereabouts, go to the police," he said, his lips trembling. "I need her back. Please." Something stirred inside me. A whim, a realization. I grabbed my bag and reached inside, pulled out my AirPods. "Please, if you know anything about my..." His voice changed as soon as I stuck them in.
"Little bitch.
My heart stopped.
It was easy. She's so weak, so fragile. Just got the rope from the guardian."
I yanked out the AirPods out, halting sobs. "Please, if you know anything, please call the police." "Oh, I will." I picked up the phone. Okay, now let's get to the second and the last story. That's not gum stuck underneath the table. I work at a restaurant. Same customer came in 3 days in a row. He had long, greasy hair, sunken eyes, and a patchy beard. He wore stained gray sweatpants and a ratty t-shirt that celebrated Expo 86. He stood in a line in front of me and ordered a small black coffee. $1.50 is your total. He fished around in his neon pink fanny pack and passed me a handful of change. I felt the clammy coins touch my hand, and I shuddered. He grinned at me, took his coffee, and found an empty table off in the corner. I leaned over to my coworker. "Have you seen this guy before? Gives me the creeps." She shrugged and went back to dipping churros in sugar. I helped the next customer, but I kept a watchful eye on the man in the corner. Maybe I was just being judgmental, but there was some undefinable quality about the man that made me uneasy. I noticed that he didn't touch his coffee. Too hot, I presumed. Despite not ordering food, I could see that he was doing this intense chewing motion with his jaw. I watched as he paused, struck his fingers into his mouth, and extracted a revolting masticed mass. Slick with saliva, it glistened in his hand. Then he proceeded to stick his goop under the table. Ah, gross, I thought. He was just finishing his gum. Then I saw him reach into his fanny pack and insert a mystery gray morsel into his mouth. He began his process again, grinding it up, working it out of his mouth into his fingers, and depositing it under the table. I left the front counter and spoke with the supervisor. We have a policy about approaching customers who exhibit questionable behavior. Apparently, studies show that members of the public are more responsive to well-dressed management types than us, uniformed peasants. I told him about this creep and his gross habit. My supervisor shrugged and said,
Whatever. He'll be gone soon. Just clean it up after.
I waited and I watched the man repeat his absent ritual. He left after an hour. My supervisor reminded me that I should clean the table, top and bottom, before the next customer complained. I brought out the bucket of cleaning supplies and begrudgingly walked over to his table. I went down onto my hands and knees and looked up. I had to retreat and avoid vomiting. There were over 24 moist bundles of chewed up goo that sprinkled the entire underside of the table. I took out our chisel and managed to wedge them all off into a waiting garbage bag. After the first piece plopped into the bag, something struck me as strange. This wasn't gum. In fact, I had no idea what it was. I've scraped off plenty of gum, and its appearance and shape is overall pretty consistent. Gum looks like old chocolate and comes in all the colors of the rainbow. In contrast, the mystery glunk was dull gray and had the fabulous texture of chewed up steak. I finished cleaning up and tried to put this revolting chore behind me. The next day, at the start of my shift, I saw the man again. He was at a different table and in front of him was another small coffee. Standing behind the till, I scrutinized the man's actions. Again, without fail, he struck his fingers into his mouth, extracted a gnawed down mass, and placed it under the table. I swore under my breath. The store policy be damned. I was going to speak to this gentleman and tell him this behavior was unacceptable. I asked my coworker to cover my till. I approached his table and saw his eyes light up as I drew nearer. He spoke first.
Would you like some jerky?
Excuse me? He reached into his fancy pack and removed a strip of meat. He held it up and waited expectantly. No. No thank you, sir. We actually have a pretty strict policy of no outside food or drink.
Oh, really?
He said.
That's a shame. More for me, then.
He opened his mouth and I saw that he was missing all his teeth. He placed the jerky into his mouth and I could hear his saliva churn as they grummed the meat and swished it with his tongue. Sir, I need to speak to you about the stuff you're placing underneath the table.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not realize it was a bother. I will stop immediately.
Oh, okay, I said, feeling more than a little embarrassed and grossed out. I began to back off from the table when he grabbed my wrist and said,
I like you.
I pulled my arm back and shuddered. I left the table, gave him my hands and threw out cleaning, and went back to work. I didn't trust the man to keep his word, and sure enough, he continued depositing bits of food under the table. I saw him leave, and my supervisor encouraged me to go clean up. The table was worse than yesterday. It was like a star map of chewed up food. I grabbed the chisel and again removed the disgusting meat stalices from the table. The next day, I'm returning from my break when I see the man again. He's at a different table and has a small cup of coffee in front of him. I resolve that there is no way in hell I'm going to allow this to happen again. I approach my supervisor and this time I am vehement. I threaten to walk out if he allows the man to continue his horrendous practice unopposed. My supervisor Relentless says he can kick the man out as long as I'm the one that does it. He opts to remain in the back room while I do the confronting. I begin my approach, determined to put an end to this nonsense. I noticed that besides the man, he has numerous grocery bags filled with economy-sized containers of salt. He sees me.
Sure you don't want some jerky?
No, sir. I spoke to you yesterday about the chewed up meat you keep putting under the table. I asked you to stop, and you did not. I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
Are you alone?
What? No. Sir, please leave. If you don't leave now, I'm going to call the police. He frowned but did not get up. He pulled out the wad of jerky from his fanny pack and placed it in his mouth. Then something fell out of his fanny pack and dropped to the table. It looked like a large French fry, but at the tip there was the unmistakable impression of a fingernail. There was no doubt in my mind that before me I was the desiccated human index finger. My jaw dropped, and I met his surprised gaze.
Such a shame. You would have dried up nicely.
I ran before he could grab me. I barricaded myself in the back room and phoned the police. My supervisor hassled me to answer as I hyperventilated, trying to regain control. The police came shortly after. The man had left by that point, but given my description, they were able to pick him up soon after. Over the next few days, the police asked me many questions and they provided few answers. A few months later, I got the whole story. Turns out he was a forward-thinking, long-term cannibal. He wanted to find the best way to preserve his kills, some technique that maintained flavor without making the meat too tough. So he innovated. He brought an industrial-sized dehydrator, chopped up his victims, and filled Ziploc bags full of people gum. The media referred to him as the jerky killer, based upon his love of spicing and drying his victims. Since he didn't have any teeth, he could never finish the last mouthful of fascia and muscle. Once the last bits of meat lost its flavor, it had to go somewhere. Under the table seemed like a responsible place. Investigations found that he had placed pieces of his victims beneath the table in over 100 restaurants. Apparently, one of his favorite activities were